Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. This week is still part of Crimes at Christmas, where we take a look at crimes that happened around Christmas. The title obviously gives it away. The case that we're going to look into today is one that has been dubbed the Los Feliz Murder House. It is thought to be one of the more stranger and creepier cases in LA. And you will find out why. Definitely will. This case takes us back to 1959, where Harold Perlson lived in Los Feliz house with his wife Lillian, their daughter Judy, who was 18, their son Joseph, who was 13, and their second daughter Debbie, who was actually 11 years old. They lived at 2475 Glendower Place, which is quite a wealthy area of Los Feliz in Los Angeles in the US. Harold was a well-known surgeon. He would specialise in cardiothoracics and allergies, and he was very good at his job. He was very well respected in the medical field as well, and was very well known as well because he actually created a different type of syringe. This syringe allowed you to remove medication from a bottle more easily than they had before. So he had a lot of notoriety because of that. It was a lot more effective. It helped to reduce contamination. It would also allow you to get the medication without it coming into contact with air, which was again a really good thing, and he was the one who founded it. So, you know, it was a great advancement in medicine at the time, and people revered him for that. He was also an author at the time as well. Amongst other things, you know, he was just a really well-respected, well-rounded doctor, and him and his family seemed to be doing really well for themselves. They had this absolutely stunning, really big house. He was doing really great in his work. You know, from an outside point of view, looking in, him and his family were just doing brilliant. And wow, let's just fix my hair. But then things took a turn for the worse on the 5th of December in 1959. He came back from work like he had done every day. It was normal, nothing out of the ordinary. He got home. He started having a drink and he began wrapping some presents. He cooked dinner, and obviously when all the family members got home and they were together, they all ate together and enjoyed a lovely family meal. It was just a typical family night. You know, they all ate together every night. It was nothing, there was nothing obscure about it. It was just a normal family dinner. They watched some TV, and then the youngest, Debbie, went to bed. Eventually, Judy then went to bed. You know, everyone started retiring to bed. Lillian goes up there, and shortly after that, Harold follows. And then, I mean, the reasoning behind it is not known. Nobody knows why this happened at all, but Harold wakes up at 4:30 a.m. He ends up going getting a ball-peen hammer. He then sneaks back into the room where Lillian is asleep in bed, and he begins to attack her. I don't know the full details of the attack, not that I want to get into them, but he attacks her, and I probably assume he believes that she is dead from the attack. It would later be found out that she did not die as quickly as he probably assumed she would have, because during an autopsy it was found that the whites of her eyes had actually turned red, and that she had died due to asphyxiation on her own blood. So, you know, she didn't die from the initial attack. He then continues his attack. He goes into Judy's room, who was 18 at the time, as I've already mentioned. There are two sort of accounts of this. I'm not entirely sure which is correct, so I will give you both. Now, some people have said that she awoke during the attack and then began screaming. Others have said that she was already awake, having been awoken by her mother screaming, and then she began to scream, and then, you know, from there it woke up the neighbours. Everyone heard her screaming. Again, I don't know which one was which. Not that it really matters. You know, she either was already awake or she woke up after. He attacked her brutally. She was trying to hold up her arms to protect her head. to try and save her own life. She was in a really bad way whilst her father was hitting her with this hammer. He, again, probably thought that she was deceased at this point. And then Debbie comes into the room and he told her to go back to bed. He basically said, he brushed it off as she was having a bad dream. He basically said to her, you know, you're having a bad dream, it's a nightmare, go back to bed kind of thing. But at this point, she was 11. She knew that it wasn't a bad dream. She knew what she was seeing was real, as her father escorted her back to her room. Whilst this was happening, Judy miraculously found the strength out of nowhere after being in such a bad state to get up, and she ran as fast as she could possibly go. She ends up running past seeing her mother, who was obviously in a horrible mess. I can't even imagine what she went through seeing that. But she carried on, she ran out of that house and she ran over to the neighbours to call for help. Obviously the neighbours saw Judy full of blood and in a right state, and they let her in, and then they do call the police. And I can't even imagine what was going through her mind at that point. She'd been attacked by her dad. She still had her 2 younger siblings in the house at that time with her dad, and as she's running away from the murder scene, she sees her mother, you know, has been brutally attacked too. Honestly, it is so heartbreaking what she went through and what she saw, and it must have been so scattering for her, and I don't even like to imagine it. As I said before, Debbie knew it was a dream, so I don't know what was going through Harold's mind anyway, but it seemed like he wasn't going to kill Debbie and Joseph, or maybe he was, but knowing that Judy had left, ran out of time. I don't know. I can't pretend to even imagine what he was thinking at that point, but Debbie knew it wasn't a bad dream. She packs up some of her stuff, grabs her brother. The neighbour next door that Judy went to was called Marshall Ross, and he obviously called for the authorities and he headed over to the Pearlson home. This is where he found Debbie and her brother Joseph together, and again Debbie knew that it wasn't a dream. She knew that what was going on was actually real, and she'd sort of bundled up with her brother, gathered a few items, and then when Marshall came in, he sent them outside. He walked upstairs and he came across Harold, who was absolutely dripping with blood, and said that he was in a very agitated state. Harold apparently told Marshall to go home. He then apparently went into the bathroom, swallowed a whole bunch of different drugs, and then apparently lay down on the floor next to Judy's bed. He passed away just minutes later, having taken his own life with an overdose. Thankfully, all 3 children survived, and again, it was mainly due to Judy's screams and obviously the alerting of the neighbours and things like that, and then she managed to escape and go next door. Whether, you know, the 3 would have been taken too if that was not the case, then obviously we don't know that. This case was so shocking to everyone in the community. They just couldn't understand what had happened. Like, all of a sudden he just woke up and I have no idea. It's like something out of the Amityville Horror. I don't even know, and the community did not know at all either. One thing the police did find though was a letter that Judy had written to her aunt. She was going on about how her parents were in a financial, sort of having financial issues, and they couldn't really understand that initially because, you know, he had created this syringe and he was a doctor and they were doing really well for themselves, but apparently his partner had actually stolen the rights to that syringe, and Harold sunk a massive amount of money into the project, into inventing it, and then his partner just essentially stole it all. They then had a legal battle, which he sunk even more money into to try and win, because that was partially his syringe. You know, he should have had some right to it, and he didn't win that either, so that was more money gone. The police also found a book open on Harold's nightstand, whatever it's called, and it was called The Divine Comedy. The page that it was actually open to, as if that was what Harold was last looking at. The page actually said, "Midway upon the journey of our lives, I found within myself a dark forest, for the straightforward pathway had been lost." So obviously many people have speculated that the reason behind Harold snapping was that he was under massive financial pressure, that he had this massive house and he had a big family and he wanted to care for them, he wanted to keep paying the bills, but he just sunk so much money into the syringe, which was then essentially stolen from him, that he just lost so much money on that and that he couldn't afford anything. It was just too overwhelming for him and he simply snapped. That is what a lot of people believe. And other people believe that he chose to, not necessarily that he snapped, that he chose to end his and his family's life as like a murder-suicide, I guess. To try and, well, he did commit a murder-suicide. Okay. As like, kill the entire family because he didn't want them to have to live in poverty, which, you know, is somebody obviously not in the right state of mind for starters. Like, you don't have to kill your entire family just because you don't want them to live in poverty. But okay. I'm not entirely sure what happened with the children. Obviously, they lost both parents that night, which is absolutely devastating, and it was done by their own father, which is even more devastating. I believe maybe the two youngest went to live with other family members. I'm not entirely sure what happened to Judy. Obviously, she was 18, so, you know, maybe she could have gone off on her own, and I believe I read somewhere that she wanted to just take herself completely out of that situation and live away from all the media that would surround it and all of that lot. So obviously, you know, not much is known about her because that's probably what she did, and I can't blame her for that. She was so young. She doesn't need to be surrounded by all of that. Obviously, a lot of people will just want to move away. Not that you can forget about it, but just try and move on as best as you can. And having the media around and stuff is just not a nice thing, so I can't blame her for that. And it's probably something that a lot of people would want to do. So this house has actually racked up quite a number of deaths in it. At least 3 other owners and tenants have died within the house. The house was originally built in 1925 by architect Harold E. Weiner. He built it for a Harry F. Schmoucher. I've probably said both those names wrong. I am wrong. I am sorry if I have. But it was built for him and his wife Florence, and then his wife Florence died in that house on the 1st of July in 1928. Then 27 days later, Harry died of pneumonia. The house was rented off to several different tenants, and one of those died of an infection during his tenancy. The house apparently stood for 3 decades without another incident, and then, obviously, Harold bought the house. I believe they bought it in 1956, in or around that year. They'd only lived in it sort of 2-3 years before he tried to murder his family, and did succeed in murdering his wife, and then obviously taking his own life. After the murder, the house went up for sale. Apparently the money from that would go to any debt that sort of Harold had racked up, and whatever was left over would go to the children, and the house did sell. But the couple that bought it never actually moved into it, from what I could gather. They just left it there, sat there. I believe they came to and fro, used it for storage, things like that, but they never actually lived there. The family that actually purchased the house were called Emily and Julian Enquires. They left some of their things there. Again, they used it for storage, but they didn't even take out the person's belongings, so the house just kind of sat there, like, frozen in time, essentially, with everything still in it, untouched. Julian unfortunately passed away, and then so did Emily, and in 1994 their son inherited it, who was called Rudy. He once more left it untouched, did not really set foot in it. Again, it was sort of encapsulated. The person's belongings were all still there. Everything was as it was when they lived there, when this horrible thing happened back in 1959. There were cans of food still in the pantry. Magazines still stacked on the coffee table. The closet still had clothes in it. There was obviously a 50s style TV. And one of the most creepiest things was that there was Christmas wrapping and ribbons like strewn everywhere. Rudy went ahead and said that in 2009 he actually did use the house as storage, so some of the belongings in there would probably belong to him or his parents, but that still left people questioning as to why all of the food, furniture, toys were all still in there of the persons. And again, it was seemingly just left like it had been on the night of those gruesome events. Rudy never really sort of answered any questions with regards to why you didn't live in there or whatever, why you left all that stuff in there, and he passed away in 2015, leaving behind a mystery that people have been baffled over for years. Obviously rumors spark, and it was thought to be like a cursed murder house, and so people would go in and like have a look around and stuff, but nobody lived in it. People wanted to see if it was haunted and visit it because it was spooky and all these deaths had happened in it and murders. People would say that they would hear screams and things and ghost stories and all that lot. Obviously that's up to you whether you believe things like that. But after that, the house was put up for sale again, and then it was purchased. I believe it was up for $2.5 million this time. I believe a woman called Lisa Bloom bought it. She originally wanted to kind of buy it, do it up, possibly live in it. It was a lovely Spanish style property, 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom, you know, it was a beautiful house. And she purchased it in 2016. She came across some unexpected problems, I believe, and ended up putting it on the market again. She basically gave up on her dreams because of all the problems that she came across, and that the property would be ideal for someone who wanted this really big house to fix up sort of as and when kind of thing. I guess live in it and fix it up at the same time. Or for like a developer to just bulldoze the entire thing down and just rebuild it. So yeah, whether the house will be sold again, I mean, I've looked into it, I can't see anything more on that, so it seems kind of a shame if it gets torn down with all its history and things and the grim history that it has survived. But it will forever remain like a shadow on Los Feliz Hills cul-de-sac, and what happened there remains a horrific part of their history. So yeah, that is all I have on the case. Thank you so much for watching. And if you have enjoyed this video, please give me a big thumbs up, subscribe to the channel for similar content. Anyway guys, that's all I have today on the case of the Los Feliz Murder Mansion. And until next time, bye!